Hey guys, this is Al. Haven't updated this project. This is my 69 Eurospec 300SEL 3.5. So I haven't updated this project in some time. I apologize for that. Just things have just been a little bit crazy. I've kind of taken on other projects. You may be able to, you may have some interest in those, and I've been watching my Rolls-Royce project. But I'm pretty much ready to start on this again. So I got stuck because of the wiring. My technical know-how doesn't extend to reading wiring diagrams and tracing wires too well. So I got held up on this thing, and then I switched gears and started playing with the Rolls-Royces, and then I went on vacation and went to England for a while, and I'm back on this. Mainly it was prompted by somebody contacting me and asking for some W108 parts, so I ended up dismantling a 280SEL 4.5, and as I was doing that I was able to kind of salvage some parts that I could use for this car, and then eventually for the 300SEL 3.5 that got sitting next to it. So I was really stuck on getting this thing running. If anyone remembers, we did actually get the engine running. The way that we got the engine running was by jumping the starter and also jumping the fuel pump, and we used a jerry can to we had a whole bunch of jumper cables basically running to the back of the engine to the battery, and we had the jerry can rigged there, and we're able to get it started. The kid that used to do some work for me, you probably saw him in one of the other videos, he can do wiring pretty well, and we printed out the wiring diagram. He was able to trace the wiring, and we were able to fix the wiring so that fuel pump would engage from the factory wiring harness rather than from us rigging it. The key problem here, and where I was getting stuck, I could usually go in and fix whatever's wrong in a factory harness. I could figure it out. The problem is when somebody's gone in after you and they've ran all these miscellaneous wires, and you've got no idea where everything's going because they've jumped a whole bunch of wires, then it gets really messy and it becomes hard. So with that in mind, we were able to jump the factory wiring. Now we haven't started the engine. The reason we haven't started the engine is we need to do a little bit of adjustment. The last radiator that I had was leaking, so we pulled that old radiator out and put this one in, but it's not sitting very well. It's the fan is binding up against the radiator, so there needs to be some kind of adjustment that has to be done there before we could comfortably start the engine. But we're pretty much at a point where the wiring is solvable. We've got this cloth wiring harness, which is kind of designed for German cars. It's electrical tape that's designed for like wiring harnesses, so we're going to use that. We also have to go in, I don't know whether you can see it very well, but there's a rubber hose. Somebody at some point cut the steel line that goes from the back of the tank to the front of the engine, and we put a rubber hose in place right now, but we don't like that. It's not very good. So the plan there is to go back in and use a steel line, but we need to source a line that's the correct size. So that's something else that needs to be done. What else did I do? So we had to break the lock open because the keys didn't work in the trunk, so we ended up basically drilling the lock out, and that allowed us to get inside here and chase some of the wiring down. We also threw out all this. They had like some kind of alarm system. I don't know what the heck. A cell phone, actually. It was a cell phone. In here, so a whole bunch of wiring jumped as well, so we kind of did away with all of that stuff. And I think we're at a point right now where anything that wasn't supposed to be there, any kind of wiring that wasn't supposed to be there, is now gone, and we're able to kind of go back in and start cleaning up the mess that somebody else made. So there's going to be some work that needs to be done on this car to make it, more acceptable. We did put a sanding compressor in, before we put the engine inside. So we installed a sanding compressor. So that's one thing that needs to be done. That has been taken care of, and I'd rather do that with the engine out than have the engine inside. But we're going to have to remake all the AC hoses. We're going to have to put a new condenser in. I'll probably upgrade the alternator and put a bigger alternator on there, for the simple reason that if it's going to be driving, I want it to drive an electric fan, and I want to put an electric fan, here, a big one, a spell, that could keep the car, running well. So that's one of the things that we need to take care of, and will be taken care of on this thing. But yeah, right now, hasn't started yet. We haven't cranked the engine since we've got that all worked out, but we will. I'm also going to use this fuel tank. This tank is off the 280SEL 4.5. It's not the, obviously, for anyone who knows, the 4.5 fuel tanks are about, a few gallons smaller. They don't have as much capacity in them. I still have the 6.3 fuel tank, but because it was rusty, I want to make sure that it gets taken care of and treated before I put it back in. This tank's in much better shape. I'd rather use this one for now and then go back to the other one at a later stage. So we're going to install that one. We're going to install an aftermarket fuel pump for now, and fuel filter, and get everything going, and then hopefully we will be in a position where we can start this car and drive it, which is what I want to do. I want to drive it because I have never driven this car. I've always pushed it around, and it's such a pain in the rear. And I also want to drive it because I want my lift back. I have this 4-post lift that almost killed us trying to get it installed, but now that it's here, I'm not using it because this car has been tying it up for the last God knows how long. I actually bought it for this car, and I bought it for my air suspension cars because if you want to diagnose air suspension, you need to have the car on a ramp, on a lift, but I want to use it for something else as well. So that's where I am, and hopefully you'll start seeing some updates on this coming up a little bit more frequently than in the past. So thank you for your patience, and if you have any questions, please leave them as comments and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you. Bye-bye.